Welcome to the Absolute Truth on this Monday. I'm glad to be back in the seat after a week off, getting some much needed rest and relaxation and spending time with family. I'm very thankful to my cohort, Brandon Weichert, for filling in for me. He did a great job. There's lots of truth to get to on this Monday, starting with recovery efforts in Texas, which continue this morning in the wake of devastating flooding in the Hill Country in that state. This footage and images were taken by our good friend and seasoned war correspondent, Lara Logan, who lives not too far from where the flooding occurred. Now, the images that you're seeing coming out of Texas look very eerily similar to those from Western North Carolina from last year, where the Appalachian region of North Carolina is still struggling to recover and rebuild. Sean Hendricks of Operation Shelter was central to the grassroots effort to assist the people of Western North Carolina, providing coverage in the lack of government response in that region. And Sean Hendrick joins us now to talk about what we're seeing out of Texas. Sean, my friend, it's good to see you as always. Unfortunately, we only see each other, it seems, when we have tragedies like these occurring. Tell us what you're learning from people you're talking to on the ground in Texas this morning.
Well, from what I can tell, it's very similar. Hill country, tons of rain, rapid rising of water, huge walls of water that are hitting areas. I mean, is it historic? I mean, it's happened before, like in '86. Even with Hurricane Helene, we had seen flooding in the past. But again, it's just how quick it happened, and it feels like it kind of came out of nowhere. I know there were some warnings that were given out, but this was a lot of rain very quickly. I do see, though, I feel like the emergency management in Texas is on top of it. I don't see such a like day one where we didn't have anything, right? There was just no resources. It looks like they're getting the help and support they need. It's like we're seeing the actual departments doing the work versus like spontaneous volunteers like myself for Hurricane Helene, where it's the fire departments doing the work they're set up for. So hopefully they're not experiencing the kind of the regional outage that we did with Hurricane Helene, and you can get resources into the area. That was our biggest issue: is the roads got washed out, the fiber got washed out. You couldn't get into the disaster zone, and it doesn't seem to be the case. I think Nick Soder got in much easier than when he got into Hurricane Helene. He was there pretty rapidly.
Yeah. What I've also noticed is that there was good air coverage, right? I'm seeing a lot of footage out of helicopters conducting rescue and recovery missions. In fact, in my 2:30 edition of The Absolute Truth, we're going to talk with one of those helicopter pilots who's going to take a quick break just to give us an update from the effort there, what he's seeing, what he's doing. So be sure to tune in at 2:30 for that. But that's something that we lacked in Western North Carolina. So it was very reassuring for me to see that those kind of resources were already on the ground almost immediately.
Yeah, that's the biggest difference is we knew what was going on immediately. With Hurricane Helene, it was such a mystery because there was no one there. No one could get in. And I think that's the big difference. This is a tragic situation in Texas, but the regional resources are able to mobilize to help where we got cut off in Western North Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely. As you noted, this is not exactly unprecedented in the region. In fact, the Camp Mystic that a lot of the news is focused on, it's a camp for girls, young girls. Several of them, I think, to this moment remain missing, though there was a large evacuation effort. There's question as to why it didn't happen maybe a little bit sooner. There's some headlines suggesting that they had noticed, so Mike could have evacuated. But that has happened there in the past. Of course, there's a lot of these stories, and I'm sure we'll be breaking down more of this in coming days. There's concerns about cloud seeding, weather modification. We talked about that a little bit in Western North Carolina, but right now I think the focus is largely on the recovery effort instead of how this might have happened. Correct, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, we see the same thing. Us that were in Western North Carolina are too busy helping people to try to worry about any kind of theories of what happened. But when you're sitting outside the state looking in, it's hard not to start looking at, hey, what could cause this? Because that's all you can do. You're not there on the ground. You can't help. And I get it. But like you said, right now, recovery is the number one priority. But I think the biggest issue with the theories is that they kind of go black or white. There's a whole group that says, oh, weather modification's not real. You're a conspiracy theorist. Stop. Then the other side says every storm that happens is a weather weapon. They're trying to kill us all, right? I think the truth is in the middle. We don't know enough about. We know that weather modification exists. There's a company that does it called Rainmaker in Texas. Now, am I saying that's what caused this? No. What I'm saying is we don't know enough about it to make a decision, but it's worth looking into. Like even like atomic testing back in the 50s, we didn't know enough about it. People see the mushroom clouds go off outside of Vegas and like, oh, cool, a new test, free energy and security. Same with cloud seeding. I don't know that we have enough information to be doing it and understanding what the ramifications are. Even the big floods in Dubai were caused by cloud seeding. So we know what happens. So we can stop kind of arguing that it doesn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene is very focused on this issue from the congressional level and looking to push legislation. We're going to try to catch up with her soon to talk more about that. And then our own Christy Lee is going to do a deeper dive with this with an expert in the field tomorrow evening at 9 p.m. right here on Lindell TV. Let's talk about what's happening in Western North Carolina. I actually was talking to people from Banner Elk, that's Avery County, North Carolina, last week. While I was off, I was actually around a lot of North Carolinians, and they were telling me that there is so much work yet to be done in Western North Carolina. There's still roads out. They were telling me of one road I know in particular that is just still one side of it's out, and it was already a very hairy road. It's one of those that I like to avoid taking when I lived in North Carolina. Now it's even scarier, but there's so much effort. There's still so much work to be done there, correct? And from what I understand, tourism is still lacking because people kind of think they can't go there, but you can. There's enough infrastructure there for that. It's still a wonderful place to go. But give us an update on Western North Carolina, if you would, Sean.
Well, it's the death by 1,000 paper cuts right now, right? It's all the details to get finished. We're building a house for Christine, right? We got our permits, everything looked good. Well, they come out and say, hey, this septic system is actually not on your property line anymore. The new rules for septic systems say this, this, and this. So now we're worried we can't even get the size of house we want on that property because there's new rules in place. So it's just like every time you make one step forward, you take two steps back. Even on the road repairs, you get these roads repaired and it still rains up there. I-40, my daughter was off at church camp and they were supposed to go rafting up in Western North Carolina from Tennessee, but the I-40 got washed out. So they went tubing in Tennessee somewhere, lost tourism for Western North Carolina because of a rainstorm that had nothing to do with Hurricane Helene, still took out I-40. So the infrastructure is still very fragile up there, and it's going to be for a very long time.
What can people do? What do we need to be asking for, whether it's Western North Carolina or Texas? Because a lot of people sit here, we see the news, and of course it is our natural inclination for many Americans to get out there and help or to provide some kind of assistance. What would you recommend at this point for first Texas, because that's what we're focused on today, but also Western North Carolina?
It's going to be the rebuild, right? A lot of these camps, try to give as close to the problem as possible. Try to give, like, let's say Camp Mystic, we know that name. Try to give to Camp Mystic to rebuild. Try to skip Red Cross. Try to skip the big charities that come in for a few weeks, raise a ton of money, and leave. Give to local charities that are going to stay boots on the ground. That's why we're not in Texas. We're focused on North Carolina. We're trying to build houses. We can't just up and leave. And trust me, you want to go help, but we're still building houses in West North Carolina. We can't pull everything away. Now, we had leftover supplies that are for the early days that are being sent out there. So a lot of resource sharing is happening, but find local charities that are verified and give money to that. Every week we're needing money for screws, drywall, electrical wire. Just all this stuff is so expensive to rebuild, and the money has gone to a trickle. In Texas, a bunch of money will come in, and then the next big news story will happen, or disaster, and all the money will just cut off. And it'll just be scraping to get every dollar you need to continue to rebuild all these lives. And my guess is flood insurance is going to be an issue in this area as well, just like it was for us.
I think you're right. Look, I am encouraged by conversations I had last week that the message to give to as local as you can, which you just laid out why it's so important. I think that message is getting out there because I was talking to a lady who's from a metropolitan area in North Carolina. Our kids have started playing together on the beach, and somehow we just got to talking about the Western North Carolina flooding, and she was in Charlotte. And she said, look, I have directed that my company matches what I get And she said, I have directed that it goes to this local, it was Beloved. And I think you share some of their information on your X too. She was directing that her dollars and her match directly goes there instead of some of these bigger nonprofits that are well known, because she wanted to make sure that her dollars were actually going to help. So obviously the message is getting out there, Sean, and that's really great. Look, we appreciate you jumping on with us. We want to not forget about North Carolina, and that especially became important to me as I talked to people living there last week. There's still so much to be done, and one of the greatest ways you can support there is by supporting with your tourism. Go visit the area. It's beautiful. Yep. Lots of great hiking to be done. Lots of great food available. So that's a great way, and I still have to get my trip scheduled down there. It's good to see you, Sean Hendricks. Anything else we should know before we close out with you?
Yeah, we're experiencing historic flooding in central North Carolina right now as we speak.
I drove through it last night.
Chapel Hill just broke the 1996 Hurricane Fran record on the Eno Creek. It's the sign that said this is Fran's flood height is now going underwater. So unfortunately, we're experiencing historic flooding today, and it's running all downriver through the Tar and through the Neuse and all the other rivers that run out into the ocean. So we're in a flood situation in central and eastern North Carolina at this moment. So we just got to kind of stand by because the floodwaters haven't receded yet. So we're still kind of get a grasp of what's actually going on here.
Yeah, we'll keep our eye on that region. Ironically, I was driving through that last night. I was a little bit ahead of the flooding, but it was a hairy drive back to Virginia. And I was right in that Pinehurst region, traveling up. I tried to take that route instead of 95, and I'm not sure that was the best route to take. Nope. It was a little bit of a scary drive, but God kept us safe, and we're very thankful for that. And we'll thank you for mentioning that. We'll keep our eye on that as well. Thank you so much, Sean Hendricks. It's good to see you again.
Have a good one. Thank you.
All right. Happening in less than an hour if it goes according to schedule. Sometimes it doesn't. But whenever it does happen, you can watch the White House press briefing with Caroline Leavitt right here on LindellTV.com. Our very own Kara Castronova will be in that briefing room today, hoping to ask the important questions. If you'll recall, it was just a little over a week ago that she asked President Donald Trump the very important question about the potential for him to appoint a special prosecutor to look into election fraud. President Trump noting the importance of doing so, but not saying explicitly that he would. Well, what we found out in the last week is that the Department of Justice is addressing some of these election security issues. Kara Castronova has that story from the White House. Take a listen.
Since the controversial election results of the COVID mail-in ballot year of 2020, Democrats and the mainstream media told us that the 2020 election was the most secure in American history.
It was the most secure election in American history.
All without proof and a real investigation. They threatened, mocked, and silenced anyone who dared question the system. But now, under President Trump, the Department of Justice is doing exactly what millions of Americans have demanded, investigating our elections. Trump's Department of Justice has launched a nationwide probe into election security. Prosecutors have sent official inquiries to state and local election offices demanding answers about voting machines, cybersecurity, and access to voter rolls. Each letter includes over a dozen questions like who can access your state's voter database, what security measures are in place, and have there been any breaches and were they reported? Even more significant, the Department of Justice is weighing criminal charges for election officials who fail to meet federal standards. Criminal negligence and prison is now on the table. The irony is rich. For years, the left told us that asking questions about the 2020 election was dangerous to our democracy. And now these very same characters are back at it, criticizing transparency and opposed to this new Department of Justice investigation. They're suddenly panicked. Supporters of this new DOJ investigation into elections say this is a national security issue. If election systems are broken or mismanaged, Americans have a right to know, and those responsible must be held accountable. President Trump's DOJ is making one thing clear: election integrity is a constitutional obligation, and for the first time in years, the government is taking it seriously. If elections really are so safe and secure and there's nothing to hide, then Democrats and journalists should welcome this investigation. The disenfranchised American voters deserve answers. Reporting for Lindell TV at the White House, I'm Kara Castronova.
And hopefully Kara will get an opportunity to ask more important questions in the briefing today that's happening at 1. Good to hear that the Trump administration, the Department of Justice, is investigating some aspects of election fraud. That should include voting machines. We're not clear on that yet. We do know that Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has been briefed on the security threats posed by voting machines. She has been looking into that. For that, we do believe she's been made a target. Brandon Weichert wrote a really good article in the National Interest talking about the behind-the-scenes effort to oust Tulsi Gabbard, asking if she's being squeezed out of the office of the Director of National Intelligence. Now, my sources tell me that that is the case and that much important information related to particularly electronic voting machines and the threat they pose to our elections is being withheld from Tulsi Gabbard, specifically by one person who was placed on her staff. That is a developing exclusive story we have here, right here at The Absolute Truth. We'll have more on that later this week, so keep your eye out. Now, the Trump Department of Justice, despite its effort in election security, is getting hammered today on social media for a possible story. It is yet to be confirmed related to the Epstein files. Axios reporting that those files will not be released because the FBI and DOJ allegedly, in a leaked memo, allegedly I'll add, saying that they do not exist. This story broke right in convenient time for Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu to land in Washington today, where he has a series of meetings, and we'll discuss that after this break.
Swollen limbs, joint pain, inflammation, skin aging, and cognitive decline. These are just a few of the awful side effects that you can experience due to poor blood circulation. And popping ibuprofen is not a solution to the pain. It's only temporary relief, and it's only masking the true problem, which is inflammation. Researchers are saying to add this Antarctic super nutrient to your diet. I'm talking about omega-3 fatty acids, but not just any form of omegas. These particular omega-3 fatty acids are sourced from wild-caught krill. Has been shown to support healthy blood pressure, circulation, brain health, as well as reduce inflammation, swelling, and joint pain. For a limited time, you can grab Native Path Antarctic Krill Oil for up to 66% off plus free shipping. Just go to getkrill.com/Lindell right now to get your special offer.
A bit of chaos in MAGA world on this Monday as Alec Eisenstadt, a quote-unquote reporter at Axios, a staple of Washington, D.C.'s media complex, reports that the FBI and Department of Justice have found that there was no Jeffrey Epstein client list. Now, according to this report in Axios, they've obtained a copy of a joint DOJ-FBI statement on the matter, which reads, quote, "This systematic review revealed no incriminating client lists. There was also no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions." They say the memo says, quote, "We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties." Document further states that, quote, "After a thorough investigation, FBI investigators concluded that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide in his cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City on August the 10th, 2019. This conclusion is consistent with previous findings, including the August 19th, 2019 autopsy findings of the New York City Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, the November 2019 position of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York in connection with the investigation of federal correctional officers responsible for guarding Epstein, and the June 2023 conclusions of DOJ's Office of the Inspector General. Now, this contradicts everything that MAGA has been arguing in the press for years, especially former MAGA influencers like the current FBI Director Kash Patel, his deputy, his number 2, Dan Bongino, and current Attorney General Pam Bondi. The FBI also released over 10 hours of footage from the security cameras at the prison facility where Jeffrey Epstein allegedly killed himself. They show no one entering Epstein's prison cell, as has been claimed for years online. But of course, the FBI themselves reported that the closed cameras monitoring Epstein's cell had been lost due to undisclosed quote-unquote technical errors immediately following Epstein's death at that prison, as per this old archived BBC report. I remember reporting on that when I was at Newsmax. So lest we forget, also, Attorney General Bondi herself said repeatedly in her many Fox News hits that she has seen all the Epstein files, and there was much gruesome detail there. Listen.
Tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn, and there are hundreds of victims, and no one victim will ever get released. It's just the volume, and that's what they're going through right now. The FBI is diligently.
Our friends at Rasmussen Reports insist this is fake news from Axios. We certainly hope so, because we think there needs to be accountability for Epstein. They tweeted earlier that, quote, so far this Axios exclusive about the vanishing Epstein list remains alone in reportage. But as our other friends at the Gateway Pundit have asked, if there were no Epstein client lists, why did the New York court presiding over the case refuse their legal request for the list based on an anonymous John Doe who was on that list? The Gateway Pundit has joined us on the show to talk about their many requests that they now supposedly, the DOJ and FBI supposedly are saying doesn't exist. And why did Jeffrey Epstein maintain a sophisticated surveillance system that is well documented in his New York mansion to keep tabs on his rowdy rich guests if there was nothing to the claims that they were detailed files Epstein maintained for blackmail purposes? We've reached a point where either Axios is lying or Trump's people are covering up the truth. It cannot be both. No one from the administration has officially commented on the Axios reportage. We'll await with bated breath to see if the White House press secretary does in a short amount of time. And it remains to be seen if this report is true or not. All this is breaking, of course, when Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is coming for historic meetings with President Donald Trump at the White House, along with many key members of his administration. Now, I'm sure these two events are in no way connected, but we here at The Absolute Truth will keep continuing to keep a close eye on this most disturbing story. As I just noted, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is meeting with President Donald Trump this week, starting with dinner tonight. And most media outlets are reporting that, quote, Netanyahu will be seeking a letter granting open-ended permission for Israel to continue carrying out attacks on Iran aimed at its nuclear and ballistic missile assets. They may shift more infrastructure, according to reports, to eastern Iran. In other words, Netanyahu wants unquestioning U.S. military support in implementing what they're calling the Lebanization strategy of Iran. But how does this Israeli request uphold President Trump's stated desire for peace negotiations and a nonviolent resolution to the current impasse in Israeli-Iranian affairs? To help get to the bottom of these matters and preview what we are likely to see from this meetings is our guest, Dr. Michael Schroer. He is the former head of the CIA's Bin Laden Task Force and an expert on geopolitics in the Middle East. Dr. Schroer, it's good to see you again. Clearly, lots of news developing surrounding Netanyahu's visit. We're finding out that he will speak to also Secretary of State Marco Rubio on this Monday, as well as have a meeting with Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff. What are your expectations as someone who watches this region very closely, Dr. Schroer?
Unfortunately, ma'am, I expect the Americans to go along with whatever he wants. It would be an amazing development, and I wish it and hope it happens. But for them to turn down whatever the Israeli Prime Minister wants, we are no more than the play toy of the Israelis. You want to know why that business about no no list of people, it's because these Israelis and the CIA and MI6 were all involved in that adventure on Little St. James Island. But the president is faced with a situation where he doesn't have a declaration of war from the Congress. He took, as all other presidents since Truman have done, unconstitutional action by sending our forces into war. And now they want the power that the Congress supposedly delegated to the president to be in a letter given to them so they can do anything they want. It's a madness. The president shouldn't even let him into the White House. If that's the goal of what this is about. The Israelis are getting pounded, and I can't say that I'm sad about that. They've drawn us into so many problems. They've suborned Americans to spy for them. They've sold their technology to the Chinese, and yet we call them our greatest ally.
And just getting back to what you noted about the Epstein files, I wish we had this soundbite. I played it on the show in the past. I was at the White House on the South Lawn the day that President Trump bid farewell to his then Labor Secretary Alex Acosta, who had formerly been a prosecutor in Florida at the time all this Epstein mess was going about there. And he had said explicitly, well, he was told that Epstein was an intelligence asset, so it was hands off when he was explaining why he gave such a sweetheart deal to Epstein in his capacity there as U.S. attorney in Florida. You're saying that the Israelis are getting pounded, and that's one reason for Netanyahu's sudden visit to Washington, D.C. for 3 days of meetings. Now, the president, the White House, the Pentagon have all contended that, we all agree, and it goes without saying that we don't think Iran should have nuclear capabilities, right? Or at least that's what the American public responds when it comes to these polls that are often used. People agree to that. We were told, though, that Iran's weapons were obliterated by President Trump and his Secretary of Defense. Is that indeed the case in that last mission?
Well, they continue to claim it is, although they also publicized the names of the 3 positions they were going to attack quite a long time before the attack. Now, the Israelis the Iranians are many things, but they're not dumb people. They're very intelligent. They're very wary of the West. And if they left any substantial material behind, I would be surprised. But I'm not a nuclear expert. The one thing I keep hearing, though, is that nothing came up in the atmosphere after the attacks that signaled that there had been any kind of rupture of materials that were radioactive. So what they destroyed, I don't know. Whether they destroyed the Iranian nuclear program, I seriously doubt. And I think what Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu wants is a signed letter to use our weapons or whatever we give them to kill Iranians like he kills Palestinians. That's just that's just exactly what he wants.
So I want to play a soundbite. President Trump says that he is willing to strike Iran again. Let's take a listen to what he recently said in regards to that possibility.
If the intelligence reports conclude that Iran can enrich uranium to a level that concerns you, would you consider bombing the country again?
Without question, absolutely.
Have you had any?
How should the president navigate this today, in your opinion, Dr. Sawyer?
Lock the doors. Don't let him into the White House. Give him a plane ticket back or take him back in a military aircraft. But they're not our friends, ma'am. We are dealing with the devil when we deal with them, not in a religious sense, but dealing with someone who is an enemy of the United States, not a supporter.
I have to ask you because, obviously President Trump isn't going to do that. Shouldn't we then try to get something out of it if he's going to go along with this? And I point to our persecuted brothers and sisters in Armenia. A lot of Americans aren't even aware of the situation there, right, where Azerbaijan has been constantly attacking Armenia. the Christians there, and the weapons are sold to them in large part by the Israelis. So if President Trump is going to help out Israel, should he not ask for Israel to stop at least selling weapons to Azerbaijan to be used against Christians in Armenia?
Well, we've never done it before, ma'am. All of our Middle East policies since the end of the Second World War have permitted, at times indirectly encouraged, the massacre of Christians. We just did it in the Syria business. We did it in Iraq. We did it in Egypt. We are amongst the enablers of people who want to kill Christians in the Middle East.
And Armenia is one of the oldest Christian populations, and people don't understand what's going on there.
Well, I don't understand what's going on here, ma'am. I'm not a big fellow that's concerned with what goes on overseas if it doesn't hurt us. And I think the road for America to return to a stature of solidity, of a social system that works and isn't at each other's throats, is to stop these wars. What have we gained from all of these wars since 1917? Nothing but responsibility. And unfortunately, a number of presidents who have been reckless and taking us into wars that like Iraq and Vietnam, for example. What have we got out of it? I think the time to go back to the Constitution, and no wars without a formal declaration. And then put those darn congressmen and senators right on the spot because it's their responsibility.
Yeah, they can slide out of it a little bit easy with the current status quo of going about these operations. And look, President Trump's base largely voted for no more conflicts. And that's, what they assumed they were getting, because that's what we got in the first term. And he has long prided himself and noted that he was the president who involved us in no more conflicts in his first term, and was, really the impetus for a responsible departure from Afghanistan. Now, that didn't play out that way in the Biden years, right? But he was trying to engage in an exit from Afghanistan. We will see. We will see. He does often listen to public pressure, so we will see how that plays into Netanyahu's visit, and we'll talk to you later in the week after we have more information about how it goes about, and we can analyze what actually happens instead of speculating on what's going to happen. It's good to see you, Dr. Schwarrier. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me, ma'am.
Now, one issue that we still face here in the United States is that the mRNA jabs have not been pulled from the market yet, as many of the president's supporters hope, but there is some movement in the country of Japan. We'll go there next with Michael Yan and Masako Ganaha after the break.
Whether it's being a weekend warrior or spending time with your family, feeling your best is the key to doing the things you love. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Nirvanta. It's a natural solution designed to help you stay active and live well naturally. Nirvanta is a topical blend of all natural essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, and a proprietary gold standard plant stock extract. It's perfect for your hands, feet, knees, back, or anywhere else that needs a little extra care. Use Nirvanta proactively as part of your daily maintenance routine, and you're guaranteed you're going to feel the difference. Simply massage Nirvanta in for at least 60 seconds, 2 to 3 times a day to get the best results. And if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back. No questions asked. There's simply no risk and no reason not to try Nirvanta today. Right now, you get 15% off with code Lindell exclusively at nirvantahealth.com. So stop reaching out for that medicine cabinet. Get Nirvanta instead and experience the difference. Go to nirvantahealth.com. Use code Lindell to get 15% off today. Nirvanta Health. Live well naturally.
Huge news out of Tokyo, Japan. Last week, the Japanese health minister ordered that the COVID-19 vaccine be banned for pregnant women. But I thought the vaccines were totally safe and effective, right? In fact, as we've been reporting here for years now, since 2021, there has been a disturbing explosion in cancer rates amongst even the youngest, healthiest populations in the world, notably in places like Japan, where they are among the most over-vaccinated people on the planet. Now, here is a top U.S. oncologist describing the strange new trend of cancer on the rise.
I have a friend who was in remission from cancer and had been doing great, and her doctor insisted that she got the shot, and like 3 weeks later, the cancer was back full-blown. She went to stage 4.
How many? Well, because it affects the immune system.
Exactly.
How many oncologists are noticing the rise of cancers and rare cancers after the COVID shot?
It's everywhere. And oncologists are screaming at the top of their lungs. And they're seeing a correlation, not with COVID, the virus, but when the vaccine rolled out, an uptick in cancers over the military complex. I went through what's called the Department of Defense epidemiological system. And that particular system showed a 40% uptick in cancers starting in 2021.
Our next guest, independent war correspondent Michael Yan and independent investigative reporter from Japan, Masako Ganaha, are coming to us with some big breaking exclusive news related to this issue out of Japan. This is encouraging, Michael and Masako. Thanks for joining us because, you know, a lot of people are getting discouraged by the lack of movement on pulling the mRNA jabs from the market here in USA and for not explicitly and fervently saying pregnant women do not take it. It was a little bit ambiguous in the language that our HHS is using as it relates to pregnant women. I'm going to start with you, Masako, because you're talking directly to these Japanese officials, and you've had a lot of movement in the last week, correct?
Yes. So last time, thank you very much for having me on this time too. Last time you had us, I talked about there is an organization in Japan called National Coalition to Stop mRNA Vaccine. They still use the term vaccine. Maybe Michael will be have something to say about it. But so they have established database. 80 million injection database, and they're going to have a press conference soon.
80 million or 18 million?
18 million.
18 million. 18 million. Okay.
Yes. And the date has not scheduled yet. Maybe next week we are talking. And so we have been putting raw data in front of the government to make them admit that they caused a lot of murder, not a mistake. And actually in Japan, it's a season for huge election, one of Congress, upper house. So a lot of politicians who were in charge of the campaign for this job, a lot of the voters, local Japanese people, are going to their rallies and giving questions and see if they recognize their mistake or their murder or not. So that's why a lot of the report is coming Japan right now because of the election.
And I would assume, I mean, according to the data, right, Japan has seen just an absolute enormous exponential increase in deaths since the uptake of the COVID-19 jab. So I imagine that people are losing their loved ones and they understand something's not right, correct? So they're putting their pressure on these officials in an election season. Is that why we're hearing more about it?
Yes, that's correct. And there is a politician, his name is Mr. Takemi. He's a politician from LDP, and one of his organization is funded by Bill Gates. He openly admitted in front of the public, and he is one of the leading figure in Japan to all of those WHO disaster. And he is running this time again. And so we are trying to warn people he is the one who caused all of this. But when he holds a microphone on the outside the street, asking people to vote for him, he say, I care about the health of the people in Japan. And so he has not recognized his, I should stop saying mistake. His, what do you call, misconduct is a good word to use?
He's a Trojan horse.
Yeah, Trojan horse.
Like the BBB bill and the BBB party, the BBB bill in the United States and the BBB party in Netherlands. Trojan horse.
And plus, one of the government's huge move right now is, even though there are, what should I say, good outcome because of the Japanese investigative groups exposing this huge number of death, excessive death, but Japanese government is now trying to move Ebola facility, BSL4 facility, to the center of Tokyo. So this is ongoing. So we are trying to raise this issue regarding the election, but government doesn't seem to care about it in the middle
So
of Tokyo.
can you explain this Ebola facility in a little bit more depth to us? Why is this so concerning? Just elaborate on that, if you will.
Yes. So, Ebola, because of the law are not, meaning that people who got Ebola is not likely to spread like COVID, because if I get Ebola, then if Michael is next to me, he will immediately get it, and then the time period that Michael would spread Ebola to others will be likely shorter before he dies. So
I'm not going to get Ebola. I'll take Ebola and break its little Ebola neck and throw it out.
sorry, my example is not maybe good, but so for Japan, like country like Japan surrounded by ocean, we should not have that kind of lab within the center of Tokyo. Instead, we should have some lab like in a remote island. But they're going to have Ebola facility, and actually, there is a town called Musashi Murayama Town in Tokyo. It's not the middle of downtown Tokyo, but there is already this facility to study Ebola. So local people did campaign to remove this facility because it's very dangerous. So the Japanese government responded to local people in Tokyo, and they decided to move. But the location that they are planning said to be within downtown Tokyo. And so her response is making it even worse. And we are demanding to disclose the exact address of new location. The government responded, we are not going to disclose the exact address because it's going to put people in panic.
That's extremely concerning, especially with what we went through with the pandemic. Michael, so that is not so encouraging as compared to some of the other news we've heard out of Japan. But let me ask you, Michael, do you think Japan will be the first to pull the trigger on the mRNA jabs, possibly pulling them off the market? Is there a real movement there?
Actually, the best person to ask that I know is actually Masako, because she knows, she's in the middle of all the key scientists and doctors and politicians. Like when I'm with her all day, her phone's ringing with the different, literally politicians and scientists who are working on it. What do you think?
Will they pull the jabs, Masako?
Actually, my answer would be no, because right now the pharmaceutical company is developing the combination of COVID and influenza together with the mRNA type. So it's what they're doing, the pharmaceutical company is doing, is even worse than COVID, because a lot of Japanese people already have antigen against influenza. So if you put mRNA type influenza injection, it's gonna make your body into attacking machine to your immune system.
Yeah, it's just doubling down, right? They're just doubling down on the detrimental effects. Real quick, before we run out of time, Michael, I do want to address a subject that you've broached on this show many times. It's not related to Japan and the mRNA jabs. Since you were with us today, I did want to bring it up. A former Trump administration official I know who now owns a farm. She had formerly worked at the State Department in the first term. Catherine Gill flagged this tweet from her company for me yesterday saying, quote, our Meriwether Farms account has been locked because of a post we made about the threat of the New World screwworm. We even marked the post as sensitive. This is a real threat to the country, and we don't feel confident that the USDA secretary, which is Brooke Rollins, is taking this threat seriously as the USDA plans to resume livestock imports from Mexico as early as now. Today, Michael, you have warned about this threat below our southern border that it poses for a while now as you made your way, along the southern border through the Darien Gap. What do you think about this decision by the USDA to start importing livestock again from Mexico, given the threat?
Talking about the screwworms 4 years ago, we were in the same little private meeting in Panama with an intel person, and we learned about the screwworms, and Misako and I reached out to the screwworm facility immediately in Panama. And 4 years ago, we were saying, we think this is going to make it back to the United States. And have said this steadily ever since. This is about putting us into famine eventually. So this is a long plan. There's a lot more going on than just the screwworms. There's also diverting our water from the Rio Grande into Mexican farms. There's a long list of things going on. And, you've seen we've all seen the fires at the chicken places and the beef and that sort of thing. This is a very comprehensive plan. For instance, removing water infrastructure across Europe to help create floods and depopulate people from areas. It's all related. And Japan has the same problem set that others have. For instance, whether it's the death jabs or Chinese moving in, buying property in key locations, which Misako knows a lot about as well. The Chinese moving in here, and all the things that are going on. And as you can see, we're both going 24/7. Actually, that if we look like we're up in the middle of the night, we are. and we just got back from, for instance, from Nagoya. Nagoya is the biggest harbor in port city in Japan. We're there because that's where some of the fentanyl is said to be moving through. Japan to Mexico and the United States, right? And also, Misako did a long interview, 3 hours, with a pediatric oncologist about the death jabs in Nagoya, which was really an important interview. That, what was the name of the doctor? Kojima.
Seiji Kojima.
Kojima. It was an amazingly important interview that. You should talk more about that. But the pediatric cancer is through the roof. So it's a comprehensive plan. It's not, and back to food. Misako and I have been looking at the food issues in Japan for quite a while now. A lot of the farms are empty because the farmers are getting old. They're either retiring or dying. And so there's bears running around up on the farmland and, deer and hogs and monkeys and all that sort of thing. But the Japan is very dependent on food imports, right? So the same thing that's happening to the United States and Netherlands, where we spend so much time, and all across Europe, is the same thing happening to the United States. Well, and Japan, reducing our food resources and making us dependent on somebody else, not God, for our food. And this is a long plan.
You've long been warning about all these issues, Michael Yon. Some people will say, oh well, it hasn't happened yet. Well, you're just so early and so ahead of the curve. And here we are talking about screwworm today. And you literally are up in the middle of the night. And we appreciate that for you. And for people who might not have caught it at the top, Masako and Michael are in Japan. So they literally got up in the middle of the night to bring this very important information to you. Thank you for doing the groundwork, y'all. Thank you for doing the important investigations. And we'll catch up with you next week, Masako, if we can, about what else, because you're doing so many important interviews with the Japanese officials. Let's catch up next week as well. Thank you both.
Masako is the one. She knows more about this than anybody I know on the Japan front. It's pretty amazing, but you need a couple of hours with her.
Yeah, and we'll have to schedule more time for sure. We'll see you next week, hopefully, Masako. Thank you both. Get some rest.
Bye, Emerald.
Thank you.
After the break, we have one of our sponsors, All Family Pharmacy, with a big offer, so you won't want to miss that after this commercial break.
With everybody talking about making America healthy again, I thought today'd be a great day to talk to all my fellow patriots about the importance of making your homes healthy again. Well, we have proudly partnered with airwaterhealing.com and their revolutionary whole home air purification system. The V3 from Air Water Healing does 3,000 square feet of purification. It eliminates dust, mold, viruses, and odors. But here's the part I love. They require no filters to ever be changed and virtually no maintenance. Whether you suffer from asthma, allergies, seasonal bronchitis, or just want to protect your family from the flu or even greater threats, don't wait to get your V3 from airwaterhealing.com today. Use code Lindell for 20% off in savings and free shipping. That's promo code Lindell at airwaterhealing.com.
Our friends at the Brownstone Institute have a shocking breaking story. Apparently, according to them, internal documents state that the campaign's goal is to appeal to the movable middle. This is related to MAHA, okay? Using emotionally charged messaging, capitalizing on fear messaging, tied to national security, workforce resilience, and economic productivity. Again, that's according to Brownstone. They're saying Big Pharma's fear about RFK as HHS secretary is not scientific opposition. It's that Kennedy's regulatory scrutiny may render their current profit model obsolete. It's a lot like what you heard is going on in Japan as well. According to the document summary, one participant expressed concern that investors are sitting on the sidelines for the next 6 to 9 months. Capital has fled the vaccine sector, and Kennedy's reform agenda is making it difficult for pharma executives to assure investors that the regulatory terrain remains exploitable. Documents obtained by Brownstone are from April of this year and outline in vivid detail the plan of Big Pharma to undermine and stymie RFK's ability to implement his vision for making America healthy again. Over the weekend as well, RFK claimed that his agency, upon reviewing multiple vaccines, found that 1 in 37 of those vaccines caused real vaccine injuries to those Americans, including their young children who are made to take them. So this is good, right? RFK is doing all the right things. Well, RFK's record is a bit of a mixed bag. Here he is last week advocating for all Americans to don wearable medical surveillance devices.
Diet, about their physical activity, about the way that they live their lives. We think that wearables are a key to the MAHA agenda, making America healthy again. And we are going to, my vision is that every American is wearing a wearable within 4 years.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
That caused a lot of concern amongst the MAHA community. And joining us now to talk about this and how to remain independent in your healthcare pursuit is David McCary. He's a pharmacist with our friends at All Family Pharmacy. We'll also be discussing a special sale that the Family Pharmacy is running too. David, I set this up just to underscore, thank you for joining me, by the way. This is the first time we've got to talk. Even with this current administration, it's important that you take your own health and the health of your family in your own hands. We're still having to look to independent means to promote our best health. Yes?
Correct. And thank you for having me. I agree totally. It's so important for everyone to realize how you need to take your own sense of responsibility for your own healthcare. Sure, there's different avenues and aspects, that's currently out there, but you are the sole main responsibility for yourself. And some of these devices could certainly assist. Some of them are quite simple, quite inexpensive, easy to use, and can give a lot of health information personally to your advantage.
A lot of people are very concerned about the possibility and the obvious vulnerability of data exploitation. And when RFK says everybody's going to be wearing a wearable to keep your health data, I mean, obviously you're not the only person who's going to be privy to that data. It's being shared with the companies. So how do you navigate? I'm not sure that can exist just because, I mean, in a perfect world where we didn't have exploitation, sure, but we don't live in that world, David.
Correct. It's similar to so many other things, the banking industry, so many other things, your credit cards, your personal identity is always at risk. So what does that mean? You just need to be a little bit more diligent. Make sure you're going to go with some companies that are reputable. Do your homework, do your research. But I certainly think that the benefits outweigh that risk, because the risk is going to be there no matter what, and for all the different things that we do. And unfortunately, even for our medical personal history, it's out there. You just need to be aware of that, and you need to be proactive to make sure that you're doing the best that you can to protect that.
David, what a lot of people, especially in this audience, been doing is to make sure that they're taking care of themselves as they've looked to alternative means to make sure they're stocked on their medicine cabinet shelves with items that they might need in an emergency. That includes antibiotics, ivermectin, steroids, other medicines that we learned were very essential to have on hand during the COVID pandemic. And I understand that you all are helping people do that, especially this week. For a little bit less, you have a huge 4th of July, buy one, get one free sale going on that is extended into this week. Tell us about this huge sale that you're offering to our Lindell TV audience.
Well, thank you. That was a great intro. We're very, very excited regarding the sale. We call it the BOGO. Everybody's familiar with that wonderful term. Buy one, get one. The medications, as you shown right there on the screen, the ivermectin, mebendazole, and the hydroxychloroquine. Understand, I always love saying this, that remember, these medications are nothing new. They've been on the market for many, many, many years. They're just realizing now the benefits that they have, even more so than originally and many years ago that we found out. So now we're really trying to help educate the general public on all the wonderful things that these particular medications that I just mentioned are able to do. And as you said, too, to have them on stock, have them available when you need that.
I saw just there as we were scrolling through the website, you can get NAD Plus from All Family Pharmacy as well. It's so funny because I just had a friend last week telling me on the benefits of NAD Plus. She's been adding that into her routine, and so she feels completely different and so much better. So it's more than just ivermectin. And I assume you have people standing by, right? I'm about to find out because I'm going to take advantage myself of your wonderful BOGO offer. So I'll be calling up, but I assume you have people there waiting to help you understand what might work for you. You work with doctors, et cetera, correct? Because some of us just don't know what we're even supposed to be doing.
Correct, we do. We have a wonderful, great professional staff, including myself as a pharmacist for 35 years here in Florida. We have a great staff, of physicians as well, all licensed and certified and accredited. And we're here, to answer any and all of your questions and concerns that you may have with this. The NAD Plus obviously is a real hot topic right now, and it's just amazing.
You know what? We'll have to do another segment on that this week, David. We're out of time now, but I want to know more. So I want you to come back on and tell me about it, because I know more people are interested. But in our audience for right now, you can go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Lindell, allfamilypharmacy.com/Lindell to learn more. We're thankful for their support. It is almost time for that White House briefing. It should be starting any minute, but Christy Lee at DC Dispatch will be with you until that does. So stick around. Christy Lee is up next with DC Dispatch.